All right, so let's move over to our weekend picks. We've actually got 6 games here. We're gonna pick 5 each. Like I mentioned in our college video, not the greatest weekend in college football this week. I mean, I still love football. Don't get me wrong, but only one ranked matchup. He's gonna pick that one. I'm gonna pick my alma mater, South Carolina, going up against Ole Miss. This one, I was kind of unsure about, but the more I thought about it, it's like, you know what? South Carolina had a week to rest. Ole Miss is coming off of that loss to Kentucky last week, who I'm not even sure what Kentucky is anymore. I mean, they probably should have beat Georgia, but they lose that one. And then they turn around and beat Ole Miss, who maybe they were ranked too high in the first place. But yeah, I was thinking about it. And I'm like, I think South Carolina can absolutely come out and beat them if that defense plays as well as they did against LSU. Um, they had a game against Akron, not a big deal. I don't really care about a 50-7 score against Akron. The LSU performance on defense, I think if they come out with that one, with that type of performance, hey, they might upset Ole Miss, get ahead in the SEC, make some noise.
Yeah, I'm gonna. We're doing a different kind of system this week where we each have our own little college pick. But before I move to mine, I will say that I actually agree. I think that South Carolina poses a big threat to Ole Miss here. They took a big loss to Kentucky, and I think that it's South Carolina's been rested up. They already bounced back from their loss with a big massive win. Obviously, Akron is not like LSU, but they
Yeah.
they did well. And then just comparing apples to apples, South Carolina beat Kentucky 31-6, and then Ole Miss lost 20-17. So you know uh, there's some things there. I think there's a big pathway here for South Carolina to make a big splash. So as Terrence said, I'm going to pick the one ranked matchup. I was looking to try to make a little bit of a splash for the unranked team against the ranked team, but most of them just don't really move me except for the South Carolina one. But this one's pretty close. Texas A&M is 25th. They are as close as you can be to not ranked while being ranked as possible.
Yes.
Uh, and both these teams have had weird seasons. The Missouri Tigers are ninth, which is kind of surprising to me when given their matchups have been, a win over Murray, which was big, a win over Buffalo, which is big, but then they struggle against Boston College, who is ranked, but Boston College is low on the ranked thing, and they got them 27-21, and then they escaped Vanderbilt with a 30-27 victory in double overtime. Meanwhile, Texas A&M took a weird loss to Notre Dame really early on, which is like, all right, I don't really know what's entirely going on that one. And then from there, they beat up their first opponent, and then they handled Florida pretty well. Had a weird game the next week, and then had another close game against Arkansas. Both these teams are weird. I guess to me, looking at it, I feel a little more odd that Missouri isn't as close to Texas A&M and the rankings. I think Texas A&M's offense uh, is going to be pretty solid against this Missouri team, who has not really had like great defensive performances outside of playing Buffalo and Murray. Texas A&M has had a pretty similar experience where their defense has not been super amazing. So I think we'll get into one of these like weird little ranked playoff game or ranked game shootouts. Texas A&M will be able to kind of claw themselves back up in their conference. So I think this one is just for me personally, watching these two teams this season, I feel Texas A&M is a little bit better. Um, and I'm just kind of shocked how low they are. Obviously, it all comes down to that first loss, and Missouri is undefeated, but I think that will change this week.
Yeah,
What
and
about you? Yeah,
just before you get hit in the NFL, Missouri obviously did have that Cotton Bowl win against Ohio State. So I mean, they finished the season strong. They were pretty good at the end of the season last year. But yeah, that's more of just kind of like a early season ranking. We'll see how good they are. Texas A&M, they might turn around and beat them. But you did mention in our NFL video, we got some international games coming up, and we're going to start with the Jets and the Minnesota Vikings over in London. Vikings, of course, are 4-0, undefeated, one of the few left in the league. Jets are 2-2, had that stinker against the Broncos, and honestly, I wanted to pick the Jets. Had the Jets actually performed better, and I know it was a mess out there with the weather against the Broncos, but my God, I just can't in good conscience pick the Jets in this one. So we're both going to go with the Vikings. I think this one might be a little bit tougher than people might think. The Vikings in the second half against the Packers, they get kind of screwed up there a little bit, fixed things at the end, picked up the win. But Yeah, for me, Vikings still go on a roll. I think they're going to lose at some point, but I don't think it's going to be this week.
Yeah, I think the Vikings are going to roll here. Well, maybe not roll, but I think they're going to move up to 5-0. Do think the Jets will pose a threat, right? I mean, the Jets had a stinker against the Broncos, where both of them had like really bad offensive performances and missed kicks and field goals were kind of the story of the game. I think these are two good defenses, but I do think the Vikings offense is a little better. They've been kind of more gelled together. Um, Rodgers has had a good connection with Alan Lazar's, but has for some reason just not looked at any other Jets player, and that is not helping. That's not working very well. And they are going to London, and Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is open. So if it does rain there, uh, maybe the Jets can't take two of that in a row. Um, but I think this will be good. I do think it's going to be tougher than people think it will. I don't know. People don't seem to be super, super high on the Vikings despite them being 4-0. But I think that this sets up Sam Darnold for a pretty good late revenge game against the New York Jets here on the international stage. Going from there, we're going to move to the Bills and the Texans. Bills coming off of that really rough loss to Jacksonville, and then the Texans coming off of a win. Bills coming off a loss to Baltimore. Texans coming off of a win against Jacksonville, which again, Jacksonville showed flashes of being a good football team, and then could not finish. So, yeah, I'm going to take the Bills on this one. We're both going to go with the Bills. We said it in our Ravens video. This doesn't feel like a team that's going to take losses like that very often, if back to back at all. So they're 3-1 right now. They got stomped by the Bills. The run game, or by the Ravens. Jeez, I can't get this segment together. The run game for the Ravens put the Bills on the ground. They could not recover. However, the Texans, while they do have an okay run game for sure, it's not as good, right? Joe Mixon is a great runner, but he's questionable. He's not, even if he is there, he's not fully healthy. I think the Bills are going to be able to bounce back. I do think it'll be close. I think these teams will fight. We could see, maybe a 35-31, somewhere around that. I think we could put up points here. These defenses are good, but these offenses are pretty high flying. The Texans, maybe not scoring 31. I don't know. Maybe they don't make it quite that high. They've not scored that much this season yet. So maybe this defense isn't the place for it to start. But I do think it'll be a close game. I think that these two teams will put on a good show. But the Bills got to bounce back, and I think that's going to happen right here.
Yeah, I'd call it Bills, 23-17, something like that.
Yeah.
I was a little bit weary of picking the Bills just because of last week, but I feel like, you kind of said it there. This is not going to be a team that's going to take these losses very often. I mean, all of these top tier teams, the in the AFC, the Bills, the Ravens, the Chiefs, supposedly the Bengals, even like the Cowboys, Niners, Eagles. I mean, they've all over the past few years kind of just taken some lumps, those random losses where they just get beat up. Some teams more than others, but I think that was just it for the Bills there. Um, and you kind of said it. If Joe Mixon, he didn't practice today. It is Thursday as of today, but if he can't really go, then I don't expect him to have much of a running game. So obviously, you don't have to worry about getting run over with almost 300 something yards. So that's not going to happen. I trust C.J. Stroud. He's definitely had some picks that were taken off the board. So I mean, he's only thrown officially 2 this year, but I still trust C.J. Stroud. He'll be fine. But I think the Bills bounce back with a vengeance in this one. Again, I don't expect either team to, really go out there and score too many points. Going to be closer, low scoring. Take the Bills in this one. And then, just mentioned the Ravens and the Bengals. They play as well. Don't know why both of these games are at 1 o'clock on CBS, so that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But in this one, we're actually going to both take the Ravens, and I was going to think about the Bengals because this is a game, as I mentioned before, they absolutely need this game. I mean, if they could lose, they go to 1-4. Who cares that you just won their first game of the season? I mean, if you're starting 1-4, I don't see how that's much better than 0-4, really. So, like, I did want to pick them just because of that. But again, I think the Panthers, they look better. But the Panthers absolutely could have beaten them had some things gone their way last week. That Bengals defense still, I don't think, is really all the way there yet. And they just have to have some kind of resistance against Lamar and Derrick Henry. I don't think they'll have enough. That Bengals offense has obviously been able to do some things the past couple of weeks against Washington, against Carolina, but again against the Chiefs too, I guess as well. But I don't think to be enough in this one. And these teams are kind of always messy, with the AFC North, but I will call this one, I'd say 28-24 Ravens.
Yeah, I think that the Bengals need this one for sure. Right? If you get to 2-3, and you drop the Ravens to 2-3, the world looks a lot different. If you fall to 1-4, then I mean, yeah, you might as well been 0-4. Like it's really not that big of a change. So the Bengals need this one. Similarly, though, I don't think they're gonna get it. I think the Ravens obviously started really poorly. Not like playing bad football entirely, but they lost to the Chiefs and they had some issues around that they could have solved by not dropping passes or not completely missing passes or things like that. Similar thing when you get to the Raiders game. Then they locked in with the Cowboys game until later in the game, and then they really locked in with the Bills game. They found their formula. They found how to keep the pressure going. The Bengals have played good offense every game except for the Patriots game. I don't really think that was a real football game. I don't know what happened that week. But they played good offense against the Chiefs. They lost 26-25. They put up good offense. They just lost a shootout with Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, 38-33, and then they got lucky. Not lucky, but some of the tide went their way. They got a touchdown right before the end of the first half, and then got the ball back in the second half to start with to kind of stay ahead in the shootout against the Panthers. But that is another thing, right? Like obviously we've just hyped up on one of our other videos the state of the Commanders. The Chiefs' offense has not been that good. They were in a shootout with them. The Panthers have had certainly had some big issues so far this season. They have been improving, but the Bengals were in a shootout with them, and then they were in a shootout with the Commanders, and it does not feel like they're really poised with that defense to be able to handle getting into any type of situation where the other team is going to score every drive. And I think that the Ravens' defense is going to be a little more capable than the Panthers, Commanders, and even Chiefs' defense in this scenario, just because of the AFC North rivalry. I think they're going to be more capable at stopping the Bengals from getting into shootout mode, right? Like, we're not going to have touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. I think at a certain point, the Bengals slip up a little bit. And I would take I would take the Ravens maybe like a 31-21 type of thing, where just a few mistakes from the Bengals, a few slip ups here, and the Ravens stay dominant. They move to 3-2, and the Bengals season is probably put in a casket for this year, which is really weird to perceive. Speaking of caskets, the Steelers have risen from the dead this season. I say that in a funny way because they did just lose 3-1, but they feel like they have been moving. They've been somehow holding people down with that defense, and the offense has had moments where they were able to get through. They lost to Joe Flacco last week, which maybe is just inevitable if Joe Flacco starts against an AFC North opponent.
Yeah.
RIP, I guess. And they're going up against the Cowboys, who have also had a weird season where they started with this dominant win over the Browns, and they got beat up the next 2 weeks, and they came back and actually kind of struggled a little bit with the Giants. They're dealing with some injuries, and that's going to actually lead both of us to taking the Steelers in this one. I take the Steelers to go to 4-1. They looked good in that Colts game. It just kind of didn't go well for them that Joe Flacco was in the game. They could easily be 4-0 right now. They looked really good against the Chargers, initially. They locked in defensively against the Broncos and Falcons. I think that defense is going to be an issue for a Cowboys team that's had some trouble finding its footing. The Cowboys team has not put up less than 20 points this season. Actually, no, that's a lie. They put up 19 against the Saints. But for the most part, they have not put up less than 20. So they've been rolling a little bit. But I do think that the Steelers' defense is going to kind of hold them down. And I could easily see this one being another, maybe even a one-pointer, 18-17 matchup where the Steelers just kind of get the edge, and Chris Boswell comes out for them in the end, and that defense holds them down. Justin Fields has looked better, though. I would not be surprised if the Steelers are able to put up, 24, 30-ish points, because Fields has started to get in a groove, and that offense is coming to life. But that defense and that kicker, I think, are especially the highlights of this team so far. Justin Fields getting his footing, I think it's a perfect recipe for the Cowboys to take a loss here.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of perfectly said it there. You got so many injuries on the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, Diggs right now he's questionable. The running game for the Cowboys has been bad. Zeke might be out this week. He's questionable right now. DeMarcus Lawrence, he's on IR. He was just placed on IR. I think just yesterday or the day before. So he's going to be out for some time. Brandon Cooks, he's out. Micah Parsons, he's doubtful. You know, like that's missing a lot. So I just don't. The one thing that I would have come into this game saying is like, hey, Steelers have kind of been playing the same game they've been playing for about the past 5, 6 years. Defense is doing all they can to win, making plays. Offense is just kind of barely getting them there. And last week that luck ran out for a good while, and then later in the game, you said it, Justin Fields kind of brought them back. They still ended up losing, but it showed me that they were capable on offense of at least doing something when they were down. Um, and you lose some of your best guys on defense. You lose that pass rush, obviously, especially with Michael Parsons probably being out. If he's in a boot, which they're saying he was, like I can't imagine that the Steelers are going to go out there and put up 40 points or anything just because of all the injuries on defense. But I will say that because of it, I don't see that defense really being able to stop much. You'll probably get a bend don't break kind of mentality at the end. They'll get down. Those probably force a couple field goals or whatever here and there. So for me, I would say it's going to be lower scoring. Heck, you mentioned 19. I would call it 19-16 or some weird score that the Steelers always end up having it in these games. I think that'll probably be the result here. A lot of stuff floating around with Devontae Adams possibly coming to the Cowboys. I don't really see it. And obviously having Devontae would be nice. I mean, you have Devontae and CD, but especially with Brandon Cooks being on IR. But that doesn't really fix your defensive problems. So, even then, your offense, you mentioned it, like they've been able to do some stuff, but the offense hadn't really been as good as it should have been this year. So, yeah, I would go Steelers in this one, low scoring game as well.